What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Off the Rails, a recovery podcast dedicated to ending the stigma of addiction through open discussion on all things recovery related. My name is Mark, and with me always are Dave and Jared. Today we've got a very special guest, and Dave's going to introduce him.
Yes, our next guest we're really excited to have on. He was drafted by the Florida Marlins in 1994. He's a Army veteran. Been sober since 2016. Nowadays, he's helping others that are fighting with addiction and mental health issues by opening up and sharing his story. And let me tell you this: Beau knows addiction, and Beau knows recovery. It's Beau Payne on the show here today.
Oh, how are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, man. I love that intro, Dave. It brought me back to the old Bo Jackson commercials where they sit at the end with Bo doesn't know hockey. So, I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, so we pretty much get into all things addiction, all things recovery here, and we're going to get you to tell us a bit about your story. Whatever you feel like you want to share is completely up to you. So we're going to get started. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, I want to preface this, guys, by saying, I don't want to any part of this interview for me to come across as sounding like a victim. I've been through some stuff like we all have, as children and growing up. I've been victimized, but it took me to get out of that victim mindset, in order for me to begin my recovery years ago. So I just wanted to kind of preface that before I get started. So, like I told you guys earlier, I've spent a lot of time in Canada, about 10, 12 years in Vancouver, a year or two out in Ontario, but I am a U.S. citizen, and I was born in 1973. I did get sober in 2016. First time that I was introduced to rehab was 1996, and I was still in the Army. So it actually took me 20 years of half measures, I guess you'd say, kind of picking and choosing of what part of the program I liked and what part I didn't like. And that led to nothing but, me falling flat on my face. I had a year of sobriety here, a couple of years there. And so I guess I'm just going to kind of go chronologically as a kid and kind of work my way up and what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now, if that's okay with you guys. So.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Awesome.
So where were you born?
Just outside of Tennessee. Yeah, Southern boy. So in a little town, a small town called Jackson, Tennessee, about an hour outside of Memphis. And, my childhood was, all the way up through my teens, it was just nothing but dysfunction and violence. And there was no alcoholism, there was no drug abuse as far as my family members. I might have a crazy uncle somewhere out there stashed away who's an alcoholic and, or whatever, but I think we all do in our family tree somewhere. But, I'm the only one in my family who turned out to be, an alcoholic and a drug addict. But I'm firmly convinced for many reasons, but a lot of times that men and women turn out to be, or they're born that way, or they turn out to get in trouble and go through real hard strife in their life is dealing with alcohol and drugs later in their life is because of childhood trauma. And I went through a lot of that. So, I can tell you guys a couple stories. For instance, at age 4, my mom was pregnant with my sister. And we were just outside of Memphis because we wanted my parents wanted myself and my sister to be born in the U.S., or to be born in Tennessee. And my dad, well, let me go back for a second. My dad's a Vietnam veteran, spent 2 tours in Vietnam, brought the war back home with them, and subsequently destroyed our family years and years later on that. I'm not going to get into too much on that, but that's a lot of where the violence and the dysfunction, and the verbal abuse, the physical abuse, and all the other stuff kind of took place. So my earliest memories of some real dysfunction with my father is, I wasn't in the delivery room when my mom was giving birth to my sister, but I was 4 years old, and I heard about this after, and then it's something we've talked about in years, is that my dad just up and left. And my mother, while she's in labor, says, "Where the hell are you going, man?" And he says, "Well, I've seen women in Vietnam in the rice paddies squat down and crap out babies. Why do I want to stay around for this? And she says, well, because it's your child, and he just shook his head, I guess, and split. So he left us all. My parents didn't divorce quite yet. He moved to Dallas, Texas. And so it was myself who was, 4.5, not even 4.5, my mom, who was finishing up a degree at Tulane University in New Orleans, and a brand new daughter, and my poor mom had to, fend and fight, try to finish up her doctorate. And with two small kids, a brand new baby and myself. And so that's kind of where I learned to grow up. I would shuttle back and forth to Dallas, back to Memphis. And I think we moved back to New Orleans at the time. So it was, back and forth. And I kind of grew up, as a young kid, I noticed the bars in the airports. I noticed that, and it all looked appealing to me, even at age like 5 and, 4 and 5 and 6. I noticed pretty women and businessmen in their suits. And I got used to kind of making my way around airports at a very young age. And that's a real adult thing to do, and it's not really something that a 4 or 5-year-old kid should be skilled at. So that was kind of the first kind of taste of dysfunctionality in my family that I dealt with. Unbeknownst to any, or, none of us know, my sister is my best friend in the world. She's the head basketball coach at the University of Colorado in Boulder right now. And she's actually the only one that stayed with me through all my years in jails and prisons. And I'll get to that. She's my angel, but we talk about it sometimes. We don't know why my parents got or reconciled. A lot of physical stuff, but the verbal stuff was really bad. So anyways, we packed up and we moved to Vancouver, BC. My dad got a job up there. My mother was a school teacher, high school guidance counselor. My dad was a businessman. He worked in stockbroking and stuff like that. So we settled in Vancouver, and I was always a good athlete, and generally the best guy on the teams, as a kid, like, 6 years old, playing t-ball or pop or flag football. And, one thing I miss about Canada is skating, man, playing pond hockey. God, I love it so much. But I'm sure you guys can identify to that. But so my dad was the coach of all of our teams, or all of my teams. And I understand, a parent wanting the best for his kid, wanting his kid to excel, and especially because I had a lot of athletic ability. And I'm not against, parents being, quote unquote, tough on their kids as far as, motivation and stuff like that. But the way that my father took things, if he did the things today in today's world that he did back then, he'd probably be doing life in prison, to be honest with you. And I'll give you a couple examples, guys, that led up to me drinking. And why I started to drink is that I lived my life in absolute fear. I was just driven by it, 1,000 forms of it as a young kid. I had no peace of mind. I was scared to death of everything. We'd say I was 7, 8, 9 years old. We'd go to a baseball tournament or a baseball game, and I was generally the best guy on the team. And I don't say that for a pat on the back or whatever. I'm just to establish kind of how things were. And say I went 4 for 5 with 2 home runs, 2 doubles, and a strikeout. Well, I would have the living crap beat out of me for that strikeout. I mean, and I'm not talking about like, a swat on the back or, on the backside. I'm talking like slapped in the face, punched in the gut, thrown up against walls, spat on, all that stuff. And that stuff became the norm. And he would do that private as he'd take me home. But the thing that really got to me, guys, is the verbal and emotional stuff that he drove into my head. You're an embarrassment. You embarrass me in front of these people. You are a piece of garbage. You'll never amount to anything. And if you ever embarrass me like that again, God knows what's going to happen to you. And I'm thinking at 8 years or 9 years old, well, I just went 4 for 5 with 2 jacks, 2 doubles, 6 RBIs, and I'm having the living crap beat out of me and told me I'm the worst human being on planet Earth. And I can't. And a 9-year-old's brain, let alone a 49-year-old's brain, can't comprehend that kind of stuff. So say we were out, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with British Columbia, but say we lived in North Vancouver, and say we were out in Maple Ridge, or it's just a suburb, like half an hour outside of town. Larry Walker's the old baseball player. And so he had these things, he'd play mind games with me. So it's pitch black at 11 p.m. There's no cell phones. You know, I'm 9, 10, 11 years old. Probably not 11, 10 yet. Not 11 yet. And he kicked me out of the truck. He had this big menacing Bronco. You know, he thought he was just some big bad, I don't know, Yank who lives up in Canada and tried to portray that image. And, you know, J.R. Ewing up Dallas. I don't know if you guys remember that. I'm old. I'm almost 50, but, you know, trying to be the cool guy in Canada, trying to act all Mr. Americano and all that kind of crap, you know. And so anyways, he kicked me out of the Bronco and like where there's a ditch or a canal or somewhere along. And he'd say, you embarrass me, don't you? I told you, if you ever embarrassed me again, you are in deep, deep crap. And again, I'm thinking, well, I had thrown a no-hitter, or I maybe gave it up, you know, or threw a one-hitter, and the one hit I gave up might have been a home run or something. Hell, I don't know. I played great. And I'm thinking, well, what is with this maniac? I mean, what can I do? And so he would play these games where he would drive away. I'm out in the middle of BFE, a young kid. This is granted, thinking late 80s, no cell phones, no, you know, no nothing, no way of communicating. And I'm like, what do I do, man? I'm thinking, like, is there coyotes around here? Am I going to, you know? And he would circle around. And I laugh about it now because I've come to grips with it. I haven't spoken to him in 15 years. And it's like alcohol. I've come to a place of neutrality with it. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just not for me. And I've done a lot of work on my father. And I don't hate him anymore. I don't care for him. He's just not for me. And that's that. And so he would come around and say, get in the car. And then he would take off when I was just about to get in that car. You know, that old trick, you know, you play on your girlfriend or somebody, just teasing around, you know, like, hey, get in the car. And then you'd goose it for a second. The thing is that he would leave for another half an hour. And emotionally, it just destroyed me. It just drove home how much fear I had. And I'll give you guys one more story, and then I want to move on from kind of the early stages of my childhood. And I remember this vividly, and I was playing basketball, and I was 12 years old. So I would have been in the 6th or 7th grade, maybe. So I was playing basketball, and I was a real good basketball player, you know, and I was tall for my age. I think I was probably 5'10" when I was, you know, 12 or so. And I was having a real crappy first half. I turned the ball over. My hero was Larry Bird, you know, so I was working on stuff that Larry Bird tried to do, you know, and of course I'm not Larry Bird. I can't play like Larry Bird. And I was turning it over and trying to throw no-look passes and be cool, you know. I think I wore number 33 because Bird wore 33. And long story short, he takes me across the street to a bathroom. And if you guys remember, you know, these old, dingy, nasty, gross, old gas station bathrooms from back in the day, you know, I mean, the junkies still shoot up in them today, you know, but I mean, they were just gross back then. And they had this big trough where everyone stood by each other and peed like side by side. Then they had the stalls. The dude, my dad, takes me into the bathroom, shoves me up against the wall and says, what? And just unleashes all these curse words and cuss words on me. And it slaps me, and instantly my lips cut right off the bat. Opens the stall door, says, get on your knees, takes I had hair back then, obviously, takes my head and starts dunking it in a toilet and bringing it up, and dunking it and bringing it up and flushing the toilet, man. And there's like piss and shit in these toilets. And it's so surreal to think about it now, you know. And he's screaming at me while I'm sucking down water and choking, and I stink like, you know, feces. And I vividly remember I had an orange uniform on. The school was called Maplewood Elementary School in Vancouver, North Vancouver, and blue urinal cake covered, you know, and I just looked like a mess. And he cleaned me up a little bit, cut the blood off my lip, and says, you know, go back. And obviously some parents knew, and I found out later on in life that there was, you know, parents did know, but my dad was very manipulative, and, you know, he was an alcoholic without being an alcoholic. He had all the traits, all the isms, and all the, and so parents were either scared of him or kind of enamored by him, or they took the approach, well, that's not my kid, so out of sight, out of mind. And this was the late 80s, mid to late 80s, you know, so there wasn't the concentration on child abuse I think there is nowadays as there was back then. I don't know. So that's an incident that's always stuck with me. And so, guys, I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't take all the punishment. I couldn't take the verbal stuff. The physical stuff actually made me tough, to be honest with you, and it lent itself to my years in prison as I got older. but the physical stuff ruined, or the mental, emotional stuff. So age 11, I think, was when I took my, no, I didn't drink till I was 12. I actually started smoking weed when I was 11, and I dropped acid uh, at age 12, and that was Expo 86, I believe. Anyways, I did LSD and I started smoking weed, and I felt funny, you know, and I felt it was cool. But I tell you guys what, I'm an alcoholic first and foremost. You know, I've been addicted to almost every drug on the planet, but with me, I identify as an alcoholic. I work Alcoholics Anonymous. I announce myself as an alcoholic, you know, and I can talk about the other stuff too. But and so I found that, okay, so here's the first time that I drank. I was out with my buddies. I was 12, 13, 12. And I don't know if they still have Black Label beer in Canada, if you guys remember that crap back in the day, but I drank eight. I still remember I drank 8 Black Label beers, and I was 12 years old. But damn, the first time that I drank, I felt amazing. All that, all those, that fear that I had, all that insecurity, all that hatred of myself, all that disgust that I felt for myself, because I believed what my father was telling me, that I was an embarrassment. Even though I questioned it, I subconsciously, it was ingrained in me. And so I just felt better looking and smoother and cooler and wittier and funnier. My jokes made sense, even though they were stupid as hell, you know, and I fit in, you know, and it talks about you know, in literature, it says, you know, we arrived, and I felt like I arrived, and that just led to more and more kind of just drinking and drugging and getting in trouble. And by the age of 15, I was a full-blown alcoholic and drug addict, and trying to juxtapose my baseball, because I was getting real good at playing baseball too. And looking back, you know, I have no regrets, but, you know, I was never in shape. I just wasn't prepared. And I want to talk briefly about something else that happened to me, and then I'll kind of move on to that. And this is important because it happens to, maybe not the way that it did happen to me, but it happens to a lot of men and women, or young boys and young girls. And so we're downtown Vancouver, and I'm late 14, maybe just turning 15. And I'm kind of the leader of our little crew, you know, 4 or 5 guys, and we're drinking and smoking weed by that time, like I was telling you. And we're down in the seedy areas of downtown Vancouver, Granville, Robson, all those areas, porn shops and hookers and all that kind of stuff. And we're like, wow, man, we're in the big time. And so we're all kind of standing around looking like fresh-faced kids, and we're wanting some weed. That's what we're doing. We're looking for weed. And this guy comes up to us and says, hey, are you all looking for something? And me, I said, yeah, we're looking for some drugs. You know, he goes, what kind of drugs? I said, marijuana. And he says, come with me. And then I went with him, and we went up to this nasty ass old, you know, apartment building where they have what we call them like single room occupancies, where they have like one little room and maybe a back bedroom or something, one shared bathroom down the hall, and there's junkies in there. And when I say junkie, I was a junkie too. So I don't mean to disparage people like that. It's just kind of the way that I saw things back then. So we go into his little apartment. I sit down. His friend's on the couch. He says, wait on the couch. I'll be right back. And I'm thinking I'm just in there getting some weed. And I'm excited, you know. And his buddy says, hey, do you want a shot of this whiskey? And I saw him as Wild Turkey. You know, it's funny how the little things we remember. And I said, yeah, sure. Why not? I took a shot, took another one, probably 10 minutes past. The guy comes out, and he says to me, or he looks at his partner on the couch, then he looks at me and he says, have you ever tried heroin? And I said, no, I never have. I've never seen it. I've never tried it. I've heard of it. And he says, do you want to? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, sure. Why not? And so they tied my arm off, and one guy cooked it in a spoon, shot me up. And instantly, you know, it was just, I've never felt the euphoria that I felt in my life. I just can't explain it unless you've been there and done that. You understand the euphoria. So what happened next is that, you know, won't get into the details, but they started to, you know, I was basically, I couldn't move, you know, I was just, you know, I felt so great, but I couldn't move. And these 2 men, to make a long story short, started molesting me and raped me really bad, really viciously, and sexually assaulted me. It was done. It was over. I didn't know what was going on. I was drunk. I was high. I had just been raped by these 2 men, and they throw a bag of weed at me and say, get out of here. And somehow I made my way down the hallway and down this little ladder that attached itself to these old rickety, downtown apartment type buildings. And my friends were freaking out. And they're like, "What's going on?" And I showed them the bag of weed. It was a little, it wasn't that. It was, and it's like it was an eighth or something. And so everything was fine, and I never told anybody about that until literally decades later. I may have talked to somebody about it 15, 20 years later is when and so I carried that shame with me too. But herein lies the problem, guys, is that as bad as what happened, incident, even to this day, what I remember most about that night is that needle going into my arm and how it made me feel. It was horrible what happened. And like I said, I'm not a victim. People can be victimized, but we don't have to live in victimhood as we recover. Many men and women, many young boys and girls have gone through that same situation, maybe not in that sort of setting, maybe so. So this is not my story is different than anyone else's. I just tell my story so it can help somebody who maybe sits in silence and shame, because I had shame for years over that. But I remember how good that damn needle felt and that heroin going into my system. And that led to a lot of years of, I was addicted to crack cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, pills, benzos, Klonopin, Xanax. We can go on. I don't need to run the gamut of everything. So I kind of put that incident out of my mind. The next couple of years went on. I moved to Miami, Florida. I moved to TO for like 6 months out in Aurora. Excuse me, as I told you guys. And then I went to Miami, Florida in the 11th grade. I think I was just turning 17. And by that time, I was really becoming noticed as a national prospect. And I got to Miami, had a decent season, played well. It was great down there. Obviously, Miami in the late 80s, a lot of cocaine, a lot of steroids, a lot of nefarious crap that went down. And it wasn't, and high school guys, we were involved in it too, and I started getting letters from all these big colleges, LSU, Georgia, University of Miami, Florida, Florida State, all these big U.S. schools down south that have big football programs they're known for, but they also have baseball programs as well. I started getting offered scholarships as a junior in high school, and obviously I'd have to play my senior year in 12th grade. So I was projected as a top 3 round pick, and there were I think at the time there were like 70 to 80 rounds, and I was going to go in the first, second, or third round pick. And back in 1990, that's $200,000-$300,000 signing bonus for a young kid. That's big money back then. And what happened was I got kicked out of school for some crap. My grades fell. I was more interested in smoking weed, doing cocaine, and I got booted from school. So I lost my draft eligibility. So I wasn't drafted out of high school. These big schools that had offered me scholarships as a junior going into my senior year pulled their offers. Obviously, with no grades, no high school diploma, I can't get into school. My dad, even though I don't talk good about him, he does have an MBA from Vanderbilt, which is a fantastic school. My mom has a doctorate degree from Tulane, and I have a GED from Idaho State Penitentiary. So I'm not a dumb kid, but I made terrible mistakes and decisions, and that's kind of where that lasted. So I wanted to continue playing baseball. I kind of got myself together, came back to Vancouver to stay with my mom, and then I went to California and I played in a junior college, which I was able to get into without having a high school diploma. I had high, entrance score tests, all that kind of stuff, and by that time, man, I was throwing 93, 94 miles an hour as an 18-year-old kid, and just bringing gas, and mowing guys down and this and that. But the problem was I started drinking every single day. And so the scouts were like, damn, man, this kid, we remember that kid back in Miami. We remember hearing about him, remember hearing about some coaches in BC, and it looks like he's throwing well again. Well, the problem was in between starts, I wouldn't go to class. And 6 days, I know I drink every day. And then 6 days later, I would show up on the mound to pitch again, and I would top out on the radar gun at 83 miles an hour. And so scouts are like, well, 1 week ago, this kid's throwing 94 miles an hour. 6 days later, he's not even hitting 83, and he reeks like booze. He's unshaven. He looks like hell. What is going on? And so they do a little bit of digging, found out that I already had a criminal record for an assault and battery in Bellingham, Washington. I had a friend who was murdered on the 4th of July in some just ridiculous fight. And I got in trouble for that. And they started doing more digging and seeing that I was a full-blown alcoholic. And guys, whether it's a sports organization, a business organization, people don't want to invest money in people like that. Got kicked out of that school for drinking. I turned down an offer from the Brewers. They said, well, I can't even remember. They offered me like $25,000 to sign, which wasn't a lot of money, a signing bonus. And in the minor leagues back then, you get like $800 a month, and then like $12 per diem a day for some McDonald's or Taco Bell. And I said, no, that's not enough. I'm worth more because, 2 years ago in high school, I was worth 300 grand, and this is my ego still telling me this is all ego. And this played a part in my recovery. As I got older, I dropped all that crap. So I went to another school where I could get in up in Seattle, a community college. I was drafted by the Marlins. They didn't even offer me, but like, a few grand. I think they sent me a baseball hat and an offer of like $4,500, and that was a precipitous fall from grace from a one-time, first, second rounder to a 71st round pick. And I had already had a surgery on my shoulder. I needed another one, and my baseball career was over. So it didn't get off the ground like I wanted to. Drugs and the alcohol and the partying. And I didn't have the mentality, that killer mentality, because I was so insecure about myself and I needed to drink all the time to make myself feel better. And I wasn't able to be the pitcher that I was, the dominant force on the mound, to really get out there and be a gangster out there and really take charge like athletes do. And later on, as I got to prison years later, is really when I found my stride, man. I played some of the best baseball I've ever played, as a 40-something-year-old, or, late 30s, early 40s, beating up on 21, 22-year-old kids. And it was great. So, because I found my confidence that I never had as a kid and a teenager. And so the kind of a common thread, guys, through this is that, and I think that so many alcoholics and addicts deal with this, is that we're so scared and we're so, I guess I can speak for myself. I don't like to speak for other people. I just hated myself so much. And I was just so destroyed emotionally, mentally. It just, all the verbal stuff just took a real toll on me, man. And, I walked with my head down. I couldn't look people in the eyes. I had to be drunk to talk to females. I just felt like my insides, I always wondered why I hurt so much inside, and everybody else on the outside looked like they had all their stuff together, like why do they look so good? And why do they, every sentence that they say, why does that fit so perfect? And why are they so funny and laughing and carefree and look like they're on some commercial for, I don't know, some, you know what I mean? And inside I was just dying. And I got to a point to where I just wanted to die. So I had to do something after baseball. So I enlisted in the Army, and it's so twisted because I enlisted in the Army because I still wanted to make my dad proud. Isn't that weird? Just after all the things that he did to me. And so I went in the Army, United States Army. I was with the 101st Airborne Division, a unit called the Rakkasans. We call it the Lost Ranger Battalion. Just, I went to airborne school, air assault school, other schools. I was very proud to be in the infantry. It's a tough job. But it requires a lot of arrogance and a lot of tough guy machismo. And I had a lot of that, but it was a lot of false. It was really false. Inside I was still feeling like that. So I drank and drank and drank. And I ended up going up to Alaska for a couple of years. And after about 4 years, my time to reenlist came up and they kicked me out. I got out honorably, but I just could not stop drinking flat out, and I drank for so many reasons, guys. I drank, it talks about in the big book. And like I said, I'm very inclusive to anyone's program, whatever they work. My program is Alcoholics Anonymous. That saved my life. But, I'm from the camp of whatever you're doing, if it is helping you, man, stick with it. It doesn't have to be Alcoholics Anonymous, or it doesn't have to be NA, or, celebrate. Whatever is working for you, man, find something and stick to it. So that's my program. And I just couldn't stop drinking. And it talks about in our literature, men and women drink essentially because we love the effect produced on us. And I am an alcoholic first and foremost, and I love the way it makes me feel. The problem is that when I touch that stuff to my lips, all bets are off and I can't stop. You know, I obsess about it. And then when I drink it, my allergy kicks in and I just can't stop. You know, it's not the, 20th that gets me drunk. It's the first drink if I can't stop. So I just ended up hurting everybody around me, hurting myself. And it just got really bad. And so as I moved through my 20s, I got out of the Army. I came back to Lewiston, Idaho. And there's a real big baseball powerhouse called Lewis Clark State College there. They've won 20 national titles. They're a four-year school, a smaller school. A lot of guys like me, who had talent, but they may be misfits or way. A lot of drafted guys, a lot of guys that played in the big leagues out of that school. And the coach at the time said, "Yeah, you can come on, walk on." He said, "If you start drinking again, you're off the team." And of course, started drinking. Couldn't do it. And so I was 24 at the time, had my third surgery after that, and I was officially done. My comeback was very short, sweet, and failed miserably. So I was probably age 24. So I want to say by age 24 to age 42, about 1998 to 2016, I spent 10 years in jail and prison. Probably about 7 years in penitentiaries and prisons, about 3 more in county jails. In the U.S., we have each county here has a jail. And then if you commit felonies, it's a more serious crime. Mine were all DUIs. I would drink and drive all the time, and I had some violent episodes when I was drunk. Then they send you to prison. So I would do, 3 years in prison here, 2 in prison there, maybe a year and a half, maybe 10 months in county jail. And it all added up to almost 10 years over the years behind bars. And in between that, and I want to talk briefly about, and then I'll get to, how I was introduced to my recovery. So at the worst and the lowest point of my life, guys, I was in Spokane, Washington. I'm not sure if you guys know where that is. It's kind of tucked up by the Canadian border by Trail, BC, and places like that. It's a decent sized city, maybe 300,000 people, but it's rough and it's nasty and it's tough. And there's gang members everywhere. And there's hardcore drugs, there's hardcore bikers, and just everything, nasty. And I got so addicted to crack cocaine while I was there that I started, and I don't have any shame about what I say. I did for a lot of years, but I was such a walking shell of a human being that I started prostituting myself, mainly to gay men, to be honest with you. And I'm a straight male, I mean, I'm not, that's my preference is women, but I was so destroyed, and and I shook all day, and I slept in homeless shelters, or maybe I got enough money to sleep in a hotel for a couple nights. But I found that how I could get crack cocaine and sometimes IV, heroin or anything like that, but mainly crack cocaine, is I would start hanging around places where I knew that I could sell myself for drugs. And it's pretty shameful to think back on it. I don't have any shame, like I said, of it anymore. It's just part of my story. I've come to grips with it. But at the time, I was suicidal. I had loaded guns to my head of just begging God. I was like, please just take me. I can't do this. It was just, and I've been to rehab 14 different times, to VA hospitals, inpatient, 28 day, 60 day. And that was a tough life, man. So a lot more about that stuff. I can go down the rabbit hole, but that kind of gives you an idea of what my life was like in active addiction and active alcoholism. And, the bottom line, the one common denominator is that I just hurt people. My kids, I was an absentee father. I hurt myself. I broken promises, lies. I didn't realize my potential. I just became just an absolute scourge of society. So let me backtrack real quick to the Army. The first time I got a DUI in Nashville, and they sent me to a 60-day rehab. And remember, I was telling you about how the first time I drank, I felt like I arrived. Well, in the 60-day, and I felt good and I felt witty and all this stuff. Well, in the 60-day program, they'd send us to AA meetings. And I think it was a week into it, we talked a little bit, then we got the program. And I remember the first, and I didn't even know what AA was, Alcoholics Anonymous was. They're just like, your guys are getting on a bus and you're going on a road trip. And I'm like, oh, thank God I can get out of this hospital, you know. And so we end up at an AA meeting, and I walk in and I look around, and I'm seeing like the best of all society, you know. I'm seeing like white people and black people and Asian people and men and women and maybe gay people or straight people or, you know, whatever, just like what our world is about, you know, just all these different types of people. And there was no real judgment about what color you were or what political affiliation you had. None of that was even being talked about. It was all these people that were like laughing and joking and looked jovial, and they were there to help each other get sober. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. And I instantly felt accepted. And I talked a little bit that night. You know, I was kind of timid. You know, I didn't really want to share a lot about what happened, you know, but I just said, you know, I've got a DUI in the Army and I have a drinking problem. And that laid the foundation. And I knew leaving that night from that meeting that if I ever am going to have a life of, you know, where I can be proud of myself, my children can be proud of me, I can be a decent member of the community, it's going to have to be in this program. I just knew it. And lo and behold, you know, that was 96. And in 2016, I got sober. In those 20 years in between, I had, you know, I was in jail and prison a lot. But I did have bouts of sobriety. I think I had a year and a half one time, you know, and I just never did, you know, I half measured everything. Like I told you guys earlier, you know, I never, like I would do half a step one, you know, we're admitted we're powerless over alcohol. Our lives are unmanageable. Well, I had no problem saying I was powerless over alcohol, but you want to tell me my life is unmanageable? Nah, you're crazy, man. As I'm like laying face down in some alley with crap in my pants and laying in a puddle of puke. But no, I'm not unmanageable. No way. So, and then I would finally do like a step one, but then I would jump and want to apologize to everybody. And I wouldn't want to address any of the underlying issues that I had that caused me to drink or that made me the choice to drink. So, you know, I finally just got sick and tired of hurting people, man. And I got sick and tired of hurting inside. And so what I did was I gave it another shot, and I got myself a sponsor, a guy who got sober in prison years and years ago. He's an old biker guy. He's one of my best friends, so I love the man to death. You know, he's 33 years sober. And I started emulating the guys in the program that what I wanted, that had that light in their eyes, but had that peace about them, who didn't feel the need to be braggadocious and talk about themselves all the time. And were just, everything that came out of their mouths were just, you know, confident, but not arrogant, you know, and these are things that were foreign to me. You know, I was always so loud and arrogant, and I had to inject my opinion into everything. And I hated myself. And I thought that if I could act brash and act over the top, I could cover up these things about myself that I couldn't stand. And I thought, you know, if I ever get found out that I'm just this timid, insecure kid and not this big, tall, strong athlete who got drafted by the Marlins and played, you know, I thought my whole life would end. And then I'm thinking, what am I so worried about that? I used to sell myself in the streets for crack cocaine, for crying out loud, you know, like the jig is up. And I started, you know, and I actually, guys, I got better in my last term in prison, you know, the last year or so that I did. I think I did a 3.5-year stretch. And the last year of that, and in prison, you get, you know, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's gambling, there's anything you want, you can have in there. And I stayed away from it all. And I started playing softball, and I started coaching guys in there. And, you know, guys that, you know, because prison is a very alpha dominated, you know, type of setting. You know? And it's like, you really have to be vigilant. You have to, you know, whether you are or not, you gotta stand up for yourself, and you gotta act tough. And there's a lot of guys that I took pleasure in helping guys learn how to play baseball and softball and basketball. Guys that maybe were unathletic or considered, you know, kind of nerdy in high school or whatever. And to see the transformation of, you know, just teaching a guy how to swing a bat or you know, shoot a jump shot or, you know, turn a double play, and seeing that these guys get better at that and excelling at that, and then seeing that confidence translate itself to walking the prison halls or walking the rec yard. And now all of a sudden they're walking with, you know, instead of down like that, they got their chest out and their head is up and their eyes are brighter. And they're like, hey man, show me how to throw a knuckleball. How do you throw a curveball? How do you throw a slider? Let's go do this and that. And it just became contagious. And I started thinking, man, if I can help guys do this, and then I can start sharing my own story because I got sober in prison, then the sky's the limit, man. And so, I got out of prison a handful of years ago, and I went straight to a meeting, and I've never looked back, and it's been the greatest decision of my life, to get sober. But I truly, truly had to fully concede to myself, man, that my innermost self, and I am an alcoholic. And if I ever touch that crap to my mouth, that poison, I'm done. All bets are off. So I work a good program, the best of my ability. I have faith in a higher power. I sponsor other guys, and I don't take life too seriously. I take my program and my recovery very serious, and I'm very proud to share stories with folks. And I'm glad it affords me opportunities, to meet neat guys like you, and there's so many people that sit in silence and are scared to, even open their mouth about this kind of stuff. And the real fact of life is that my story is really not that different from a lot of people, to be honest with you. We didn't get to wherever the rooms, or we didn't get to recovery on a winning streak, man. None of us did. We're here for a reason. And, I certainly didn't, and so to be able to affect, another struggling alcoholic or addict in a positive way, just is I don't even have the words to describe it. And I got to the point where I'm like, okay, am I just going to continue to lie down and just die, or am I going to take charge of my life? And I decided to finally take charge of my life, and I'm reaping the benefits of it. And the biggest benefits of it, guys, for me, is to see the light come on in somebody else's eyes that I get to work with. And so, yeah, all that stuff I told you about, my life, my background, it's all been worth it. I don't regret it, because it's led me to the place I am in life right now. And I think that maybe if I had made it as a ball player, or I didn't go through any of that stuff, maybe I don't have a story to share with people to save some lives, hopefully. So that's kind of what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now in a nutshell,
Beau.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much of what you just said resonated with me big time. And especially the walking with your head down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm personally a member of AA.
Okay. Cool.
For like 6 months now. And
Okay.
I love it. It's great.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
now I think
Jared's a big meeting guy. Loves his meetings.
Oh, I love me.
Oh, I'm a minimum one meeting a day guy. So
Oh, I wish I had time for that.
well, I get them in the morning. I go to a 7 a.m. or maybe a noon, and then I kind of get on with my day. But so anyway, sorry, go ahead, Jared. I'll listen.
I was gonna say, but we could have used you at our rehab to show Dave how to throw a baseball, maybe.
Was it kind of like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen 50 Cent or Barack Obama throw out the first pitch, man. They throw with that kind of limp wrist, and they throw in the dirt, and it's just awful. I'm not saying you throw like that, Dave. I'm just saying.
No, it was bad, but we talked about it. It was like all the drinking.
Mark's got to look.
Forgotten to throw a baseball. It was like Mark and I went out there. I brought my glove like a big deal, and I started throwing the ball, and I can't make it. I make it 10 feet short of Mark every time, and we're only about 20 feet away from each other. I was so embarrassed.
On, man. You got to do better than that.
But it was just like my whole coordination was off, and it was awful. But I figured it out after a couple of days.
Oh man,
well, you know what?
Goal
within a week, yeah, not a couple days, within a week. But it's funny. It's funny you guys can laugh at that, because it is hilarious. But on the flip side, it's like that crap, those years of drinking and using all that stuff, it just robs us of everything. Everything that our enjoyment, man, playing sports or reading or hanging out with our friends or doing whatever we like to do, and that's a perfect example, man. It just physically, it just kills us. And
the crazy.
I'm glad you got it. Yeah.
The crazy thing is, too,
go ahead.
you think you're doing everything better drunk, too,
and
really you're not.
Ridiculous.
And then
man.
Then you're sober for a little bit, and you can't do anything. It's brutal, but it's good because you start to learn how to do things again.
It's funny. Exactly. And we think we're so great at it, when we're drinking and all that kind of crap. And then we get sober and we suck at everything because, we're trying to, it's like it's like learning how to walk again, or just whatever. But the farther for me that I got away from my first drink, and those years and years that I put in between that first drink and where I am now, talking with my head up, looking people in the eyes, speaking in front of people, playing sports, having confidence as opposed to this little weak arrogance and all this kind of stuff. The promises that they talk about, the nice set promises, they come in droves, So it's really a payoff, we got to struggle a little bit, and realize that we put ourselves through hell. And it's going to be tough, and early sobriety can be tough, but man, I'm telling you, Jared, I would not trade my sobriety for anything in the world. And it has grown, and it continues to grow exponentially. And I'm a big proponent of quality sobriety. I admire folks with 20, 30, 40 years sobriety. You see that in the rooms, but I live one day at a time. I sponsor a few guys, and I'm always saying, look, we are living for today, one day at a time. I want quality sobriety. When I got sober, and I think I mentioned this earlier, I said, I'm not going to be a dry drunk. I'm not going to be miserable. I simply am not going to be. And I've developed this, I call it flipping the script, man, looking at things through a different perspective, even on the crappy days, I just refuse to, I can look at things through a different pair of lenses, that's a famous quote by Chuck C, but it's, but if we practice gratitude on a daily basis, if I do, I know for me, if I'm in gratitude, even through the shitty times, I can't lose, man. And that's the beauty of being sober.
Well, you mentioned like walking with your head down and, like losing, not having confidence. And I know when I was using, I had a lot of that negative self-talk, like constantly telling myself, I'm a piece of shit, blah, 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 but I find in recovery, getting that confidence is amazing. And is that something you can relate to?
100%. So, Mark, I'm glad you asked that, because anytime anybody asks me, they'll say, dude, what's the greatest thing that sobriety has afforded you, or you've gotten out of your sobriety? And I will, without hesitation, Mark, I will say, I feel comfortable in my own skin. And that is something that from age, like I told you guys, as a very young child, all the way when I was 5 years old, I would always say to myself, well, maybe when I'm 8, I'll feel grown up. And when I was 8, I would say, well, maybe when I get to be 13, I'll feel comfortable. And that lasted, and then when I was 35, I was like, well, maybe when I'm 40, I'll finally be an adult, and I never felt comfortable in my own skin. So I was always lying and being braggadocious and arrogant because I had no confidence, and I didn't want to get found out, if that makes sense. And so when I started working a true program, I hope that when I die, I'm still learning, to be honest with you, because the day that I say, oh, I've got it figured out, that's the day that you'll see me with a drink. You'll never hear me say I've got it figured out. But to answer your question, I kind of went the long route there. Absolutely. The confidence coming back is it just opens up an entirely new world. It's like they say, being rocketed into the fourth dimension. It's my entire world is opened up. My career is opened up again. The way I feel about myself. And when I finally felt it, realized that, man, happiness is not how many zeros you have in your bank account, because believe me, there aren't many in mine. Or it's not about having a Ferrari or a brand new Mercedes in your carport. Happiness starts from inside. And for me, what I've gained, along with the confidence and the pure happiness I have about my life now, and is the relationships that I've got back in my life. My daughter and I didn't see each other for 10 years. She's squarely in my corner. My mom and I didn't see each other for 14 years. She's my best friend. I mean, these are stuff that, we just broke down and cried when we saw it, and stuff like that. And it's the relationships, and I had a great friend, an older gentleman who's passed, his name is Joe Marshall. He went to the U.S. Naval Academy and was a United States Marine in Vietnam, and was very decorated, and just the finest man that I've ever known in my life. And he said, Beau, I need to tell you, he said years ago when I was still in addiction, he says, life is about relationships. It is about how you treat people, and it is about the relationships that you cultivate with people. And this was a man who had a lot of money. He said, it is not about that Mercedes over there. It's not about what's in your bank account. It's not about how good looking or whatever girl you're with, whatever, any of that superficial crap. It's about how you treat people And it's about the relationships that you cultivate with people. That's the legacy that you want to leave behind. And at the time, it made sense to me, but I wasn't ready to quit. And as I got sober and as the years pass on, I'll never, forget those words that he told me. And that's something that I live by. I never want to treat somebody like crap. And if I do, I have a way to make amends to them, a way to make proper amends to somebody instead of saying, oh, I'm sorry, and then doing it a week later. Get to understand why I did what I did and make a heartfelt amends to somebody and that I don't ever have to do it again. And that's the big thing.
Bo, I was curious, and I know you touched on I think some of it anyway, but from the last time you went and kind of got sober from all the previous times attempting, and I know you had said that you had started the step one, or there's different reasons why you fell off. But our last interview we did with someone, we talked about being vulnerable. Was part of it you weren't ready to be completely vulnerable and share your past in those previous times, and then finally the last time you were?
Yeah, being vulnerable was something that I never wanted to be because I was scared. I was scared what people would think of me. I lived my life A, in shame, B, in fear, and C, I was always so concerned about what others thought of me. And I don't live in either three of those anymore. So naturally, I was not going to be vulnerable. I was guarded. I was inauthentic or unauthentic. I don't know what the word is. I was not authentic, put it that way. And as I got sober and I learned, I kind of put my toe in the water a little bit and realized that, holy shit, man, I'm not getting burnt here. And I can be a little bit more vulnerable. And now, as the stuff that we've talked about on your guys' show tonight, I have no shame about talking about that stuff anymore. And yeah, occasionally you'll have somebody who'll make a joke out of it and drop a word that's not so kind or whatever. And it doesn't even bother me because I don't care what they think, I get stuff in my DMs, saying, hey man, I'm so appreciative of the stuff that you posted. And, I got a note from a guy the other night who said, I'm a football coach in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm 44 years old. And every Saturday night I drank 15 beers and work on my fishing tackle. He said, seeing your posts about sobriety, I want you to know that just because of that, I've put down the beer. And I haven't drank in a long time. And this made me cry when I read this. What in the last sentence or two he said, I have a 3-year-old daughter and I never want her to see her father drunk. And so for me, I mean, I just think about, and that's not just a one-off, and it makes me feel good to see those kind of things, and it keeps me accountable too, because I can't be that guy who's espousing sobriety and talking about recovery and then going out and drinking and that. And plus I don't want to drink, I love my life like this and I don't mind being vulnerable at all. It's cathartic, man. It opens up so much. It's healing for me. And then, I always, as alcoholics, I think we're always so self-absorbed, me, everyone's thinking about me and it's all about me, but man, just to realize that I'm just one of is such a great feeling. And I don't have to be anything but myself. And so, yeah, Dave, that's allowed me to be completely vulnerable. And my lack of vulnerability in the past definitely was a roadblock to me getting sober.
Well, I've noticed personally, there's an energy with people in recovery, and we talk about it, and it's like they're appreciative of this second shot at life, and I've kind of noticed that with you. And do you feel that same way?
Yeah. Oh man, I've been on fire for like 6 years.
Yeah.
I seriously, people I walked into a meeting the other day and this guy that I work with, this young kid, goes, how you doing, man? And I go, man, I'm wonderful, man. How are you? And this old grumpy, he's like 32 years sober. He's like, bullshit. No one's wonderful. Join the human race. He's a friend of mine. So he said it, but I just looked at him and I just said, keep coming back, man. And he's got and he didn't like that, because he's got 32 years or something, but, and I just I don't know. Something happened, 6 years ago to where I just started living in gratitude, even through the shitty times. because let's face it, man, life is life. And in sobriety, we're going to go through tough times too. I've given 3 different eulogies at veteran cemeteries in the past 2 years over this damn pandemic. 2 guys friends of mine were killed drunk driving. 1 guy OD'd. I've had several other friends who died. I'm sure you all may know people. I mean, it's been terrible with mental health issues and addiction issues. And so sobriety is not a walk in the park all the time. But like I said, I'm so grateful for my life. I'm so grateful that I'm not sitting in an 8x10 prison cell for, doing 3 or 4 years straight and having to worry about looking at all the time. I'm so grateful that I'm not doing those things on the streets, because I just looked at those people as conduits to drugs. They weren't human beings to me. I didn't, I'm just so grateful that I have food in my fridge. And I'm grateful that, after I'm done talking to you guys and, I'm going to go lift weights at the gym and just kind of hang out. And I'm just grateful for life. And I have this infinite gratitude, for the things that, Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson. I love that program. I love the history of that program. Jared, I know you talked about being 6 months in, man. I encourage you guys, if you're to look into the history of that program. And it's just amazing. It is phenomenal what those 2 men started and how it's branched out over since 1935. And I think it saves millions of people's lives over the years. It certainly has helped me. It certainly has saved my life. So to answer your question, I guess, Mark, I don't have to be ungrateful or time to be miserable. So yeah, I'm ecstatic to be sober. I love it, man. I've been on like a 6-year pink cloud. And the cool thing is that when the shitty times come, and they have come, I have a way to deal with it. I don't have to react all wildly and inappropriately and go to the bar and drink and feel sorry for myself or go down to the 7-Eleven and get a few 40s or some crap malt liquor and just start getting shit faced and start posting weird shit on Facebook, and putting Waylon Jennings videos on my friends' pages at 4:30 in the morning, like, why aren't you listening to this? And they're like, because it's Tuesday and I got to work, son of a bitch. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous, man. So yeah, I've been accused of being a little too, I don't know, happy about things, but I'm just grateful, man. I'm happy to be sober.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
I was just wondering, like, seems to like a lot of athletes growing up like have addiction issues. Do you think there's a correlation between like addiction and like playing sports?
100%. Huge correlation for a couple different reasons. And I'll tell you a real quick story. I don't know how much time we have. This won't take long. I broke my ankle when I was 13. This is before I had that incident with those men and the heroin stuff. And I was prescribed Percocet. But I broke my ankle playing basketball. I came up for a rebound and my foot landed on another guy's ankle and I twisted it and broke it. And so I got the bottle of Percocet, my mom went and picked it up and it was gone in like 2 days. Because I was, I loved the way it made me feel, but excuse me. So, there's that sports aspect of sports doctors. And as I progressed and played on bigger teams and more important teams, we had doctors and stuff like that. And back in the day, and I don't know how much it is now, but they push pain pills on you so much, and I got really addicted in the late 90s to OxyContin. And that kind of led to a lot of heroin abuse. And I actually had hepatitis C for about 13 years. I did take Harvoni about 6 years ago, and I'm cured of it. So it's out of my system. It's gone. It's not dormant. I'm cured of it. But so I had, I got into pills playing sports because I was always banged up playing baseball, football, surgeries. Hockey players take brutal punishment, concussions and things like that. So there's that aspect of it, of the pain pills being pushed on athletes. And then there's also the, I'm macho, I'm strong, I'm not talking about my feelings, I'm pushing through, I'm hurt, but I'm not letting anybody know I'm hurt. And how do we deal with being hurt physically? Man, we drink that stuff away, we take pills, we take Vicodin, Oxycontins, oxycodones. I mean, so there's that kind of aspect of it too. So I think athletes are held to a different standard because they think that a lot of athletes, I don't want to say us, but they don't know, we're human beings and we bleed just like everyone else. And just because we can throw a ball 94 miles an hour or someone can, hit a slap shot 105 miles an hour, or Lawrence Taylor, or whatever, any sport has their stars. But sports are tough and they're physical. And when you're having to do it, look at professional wrestlers. Everyone jokes about, it's all fake and funny and stuff, like, Ric Flair and all those guys. But those dudes, look at the deaths in that, all the overdoses in that, and all the craziness and all the shit, wild deaths that come out of that. Those men and women beat themselves up, literally, just all the physical diving off ropes and everything, 200 nights a year. So they're taking pain pills constantly. And then, and there's been some terrible, the Canadian guy, I don't know if you guys remember him, his name is Chris Benoit, I see Mark shake, nodding his head, and just, so yeah, it's a correlation for sure. The physical stuff, and then trying to push through, and then having the doctors available to us too, to push that stuff on us. Yeah.
And Dave, you had another question?
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to get too much into it, but it was a bit of a follow-up on kind of, with your father. If, you talked about it, how where you are at right now, does that come with, did you have to do some forgiveness first, or is it, you say you don't love it or you don't hate it, but do you have to first come to forgiveness and then get to that point, or?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question, and it's nuanced, and I'll give you the best answer that I know how to do. Know how to give you the most honest answer that I know how to give you. I haven't really forgiven him for his sake. I've forgiven him for my sake. That may sound selfish, but I don't want to live in hate for anything or anybody, because resentment is the number one offender of this disease of relapse. And I don't want to resent anybody. Doesn't matter what they've done to me. I don't. So I had to do work on it, and I had to do work on him, and I did step work on it, and I prayed about it, and things like that. And the best that I could do, Dave, is come to a point to where I'm not going to let this affect me anymore. I had to say, not to his face, and I haven't written him any amends or anything like that. And, and I don't have enough time to talk about that, but it's, the long and short of it is, I've forgiven him, but it's a selfish reason, because I don't want to live in hate for anybody, even that man. So there's in the big book, it talks about a place where we've come to a place of neutrality with alcohol. We're neither fighting it nor or wanting it. We haven't even sworn it off. It's just not a thing for us, and that's kind of the way I am with my father. I haven't talked to him in probably 15 years, and he's just not an issue in my life anymore. I'm neutral toward him, and that's honestly the best that I can do personally with him. And it's a good space for me to be in, because I don't sit around, hands balled up and inside hating him, and I don't even think about it, ruminate about it. I think about him occasionally if I know that I'm going to be on a show like with you guys, and I'll talk a little bit about, kind of establish a baseline of how my life was as a kid. But that's a fantastic question, and I think that people misconstrue sometimes that we have to forgive everybody that maybe have wronged us, but he did some pretty terrible things to me, and maybe I'm not ready to. Maybe I will someday down the road, but the best I can do now is forgive him, because it helps me. Because I don't want to live in anger. So that's the best that I can give you.
I think that's an important answer, because there's probably a lot of people that are struggling in similar situations that, perhaps, had some traumatic things already, and that may be stopping them from moving on in their journey. But I think what you said, forgiveness for yourself, is important, right? And
can I add on to that real quick? And another reason, and I asked my sponsor, I remember this a few years ago, and we were doing some step work on my dad, and I said, man, I just can't forgive this guy. And he says, well, you need to forgive him for yourself, and you also need to forgive him, even if you don't maybe feel it truly in your heart, because it's blocking you from being a better person. And the whole idea of you being sober is so you can help somebody else. Our primary purpose in this program is to stay sober and help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. And if I'm all balled up in hate and angry at somebody and blocked off from, my higher power and things like that, how am I going to be of best use to somebody else? I can't, because I'm all jammed up inside. So again, it's a fantastic question, Dave, and it's nuanced and there's a lot of layers to it. But I think that guys and gals that have gone through abuse maybe are not ready to fully forgive their abuser or their, perpetrator, whatever you want to call them. There's a way to kind of reach that forgiveness of neutrality to where we're not balled up and we can still be of use to other people. Because like I said, I don't want to live angry, because when I live angry, I'm in resentment. When I'm in resentment, I'm not in gratitude. When I'm not in gratitude, I am of no use to my fellow alcoholic, straight up. And my main thing in my life these days, and my life is opened up because of this, is because A, my sobriety, and B, passing my sobriety along to others, plain and simple. So, I hope that answers that for you. That's the best kind of that I can give you, but I think some people can relate to that. So.
Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah, I think you need to be a little bit selfish too in sobriety as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I'm glad you said that, Jared. Anything they put in front of our sobriety, we're going to lose, man. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
I mean, I've proven it time and time and time again. And it's funny, like, our normie friends will be like, what's the most important thing in your life? And I'm like, well, God and my recovery. And they're like, what about your kids and your family? And I'm saying, well, they're incredibly important, but without recovery, I don't have my kids. Without recovery, I don't have inner peace or some freedom. Without recovery, I don't have anything. So if I put anything in front of my recovery, I'm going to lose. And that includes my children and my family, because I've proven it, my freedom. And alcoholism is such an insidious disease. I mean, for me, I know that if I was to drink again, I know all the terrible things that would happen. And yet back in the day, I still knew that too, but I chose to drink because I was so deep in my addiction and my disease. But now that I've found a way out, I know that my number one, the most important thing in my life is my program and recovery. And then everything else falls into place,
That's
That's
an
awesome.
incredible answer. Our loved ones deserve best versions of ourselves, and that really happens through
100%.
sobriety, right?
100%, man. That's a great way to put that, Mark. They do. They really do. Because, we've, and I'll speak for myself, but a lot of alcoholics, we've not been good to our loved ones through the addiction and alcoholism and all that stuff. So I think that once we know that we're sick and we know how to get better, I want to be the best father that I can. I want to be the best brother that I can. I want to be the best son that I can. And I can't be any of those things unless I'm in recovery, and my type of recovery is quality, And so that's why, again, I think they deserve it from us, because we hurt a lot of people in this disease. It's not like cancer or any other kind of medical. I know, people feel sorry for you, or this and that. I mean, this is a stigma, a disease of stigma. It's like, oh, he's an alcoholic, he's a drug addict, and the ripple effect just destroys families, and sends people to jails and prisons and violence and domestic violence and running people over in your cars and bad fights and just everything, you guys, and so it gets that stigma, and it actually is, it's a spiritual malady. It's a disease, man. So yeah, our loved ones definitely deserve the best version of us. Absolutely. And the only way I know how to do that is to work my program of recovery above everything and anything.
Yeah, my fiance always says to me, like, when I'm starting to get edgy or something, she pretty well boots me out the door to a meeting. So and I come home and I'm good. So it's, yeah, that over everything right now. Well, not over
absolutely,
everything,
man.
that first, then everything good in life follows. So
yeah, man, and it takes a little while to kind of get a grip and to kind of understand that. But once I say we as a kind of a community in recovery, start to see these promises manifesting in our lives and trust the process, like, wow, this is really working.
Mhm.
And, my relationships are better. you know, my health is better. The way I feel about myself is better. And it's like, wow, what am I doing? Well, oh, I'm working a program of recovery. Gee, go figure. You know, so it's not rocket science, man. You know, people want to just make this program so awesome, and it's not hard. I just do a little bit of work. I stay in contact, you know, with my higher power. I do have faith. I have really truly an unshakable faith. Um, and I just refuse to be miserable, man. Even in tough times, you know, we have a solution, which is nice. The solution doesn't lie at the bottom of a bottle of Jack Daniels or drugs or any of that other stuff for me anymore.
No, even like when I first went to rehab, where we all met here,
Oh, I didn't
didn't
know
think,
that. Cool, man.
yeah, I wasn't planning on going to AA after that or anything like that. When I got out, I was like, I think I sat in front of the church for like 2 weeks in a row and didn't go in. But I
Yeah.
think, and then the third week I went in, but I think I'm glad I went in because I don't think I'd be in this position if I didn't. So.
Oh no, I'm proud of you, man, because you know a lot of guys go to rehab, including myself in the past, and I've told you I've been several times. We have a saying, it's a prison saying, but you know, and and you can apply this to rehab too, is out the gate at 8 and the spoon by noon. And you know, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of sad too, you know.
Yeah.
You know, because it's quite honestly, it's a fact of life. And so I have mad respect for you, Jared, for all of you guys for going to treatment, going to rehab, and then getting sober, you know, and starting something like this, you know, your podcast and incredibly professionally ran too, man. And I think that you guys are going to help so many and will continue to help so many people, you know. So that's awesome because so many guys you see like, oh, I just got out of jail. I just got out of prison. I just got out of rehab. Let's go get high. Let's go get drunk. I was one of those guys too. But last time I was like, no, I'm going back into a halfway house because I got out of the joint, out of the penitentiary. And you know, so you got to down here, you got to move into a group home, you know. And I was there for 6 months, but that night I was at AA. And I said, this is a new life. I started in prison. I'm continuing it. And it's been years and I haven't looked back, man. So, and it sounds like you guys are doing it too. So, yeah. So, congratulations to all you guys too, man. This is awesome. Yeah.
Congratulations on 6 years.
Yeah. Almost, you know, one day
Almost.
at a time. I'm not quite there yet, you know, but God willing, you know, we'll make it. So,
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. You came in and killed it. Did an incredible job, and we're very appreciative that you stopped by and shared your story with us.
Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure. Yeah, maybe we can do it again down the road sometime. And I just want to say before I go, there are miracles out there. To anyone listening, if you feel like you cannot go on anymore, if you feel like you just want to kill yourself, that you're too tired, you're too old, life's passed you by, you'll never stop drinking, don't give up. You know, sometimes you just got to put your left foot in front of the right and breathe and repeat and have a little faith, and life will get better. I mean, there are miracles out there waiting, and just take it, man. It's there waiting for you. So, guys, I really appreciate it, and thanks for all you're doing in this community and passing on hope. That's what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Beau.
Yeah, thank you, Beau.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you or
Got it,
someone
guys.
you know is struggling with addiction, please ask for help. Thank you very much for listening.